Right. So today we're taking a deep dive into some Alan Watts lectures.
Oh, yeah.
This guy,
I love Alan Watts.
he's the philosopher who can make like the most complex ideas
Right.
sound like an adventure.
Absolutely.
And we're going to explore how he tackles these big questions about,
Sure.
consciousness and reality.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are we separate from the universe
Yeah.
or a part of it? Is life, more like a carefully crafted object or a spontaneous performance?
Right.
And why do we feel like strangers in the world anyway?
Yeah, it's fascinating how he approaches these questions.
Yeah.
He starts by kind of dissecting these two common ways of thinking about the universe that he thinks have led us down some pretty confusing paths.
He calls those the ceramic model and the fully automatic model.
Right.
I have to admit, I love those names.
Yeah.
Just the names alone make me want to hear more.
They're great.
So what's the...
So the ceramic model is essentially the idea that the universe is an artifact,
Okay.
something created by an external force. It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
a
Potter shaping
cranker.
clay.
Okay, that sounds very familiar.
Yeah.
It's like that classic image of God as the grand potter,
Right.
and we humans are the clay that he's molding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Watts points out that this idea isn't just limited to religion.
Right.
It pops up like everywhere
Yeah.
in Western culture,
Yeah.
in our language, architecture,
Yeah, you're right.
even our anxiety.
Even the way we talk about being created
Right.
reinforces that.
Totally.
Yeah.
And this can lead to some pretty tricky questions.
Like what?
Well, if we're just molded clay, where does free will come in?
Oh, yeah.
Are we truly responsible for our actions?
Yeah, it's almost like we're stuck in this
Right.
predetermined role,
Right.
Playing a part in a script we didn't write.
Exactly.
No wonder it can make people feel alienated.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's one side of the coin.
Okay.
Then there's the fully automatic model.
Okay.
The view that the universe is like this giant machine
Okay.
running on predetermined laws of nature.
Mm-hmm.
This one makes me think of like those really elaborate clockwork mechanisms.
Yes.
All gears and springs
Yeah.
ticking away with predictable precision.
A perfect image.
Yeah.
In this model, there's no need for a divine creator or a grand plan.
Right.
Everything just unfolds according to these fixed laws.
Yeah.
Like billiard balls bouncing around on a cosmic pool table.
But then if everything is predetermined,
Right.
where does that leave us?
Right.
Are we just cogs in a machine
Yeah.
with no real purpose or meaning?
That's the concern that Watts raises.
Okay.
He points out that this model, while seemingly objective and scientific,
Right.
can lead to the sense of futility and meaninglessness.
Right.
We become just a random arrangement of matter,
Yeah.
a fluke in a cold and uncaring universe.
So on the one hand, we have the anxiety of being controlled by an external force.
Right.
And on the other hand, we face the bleakness of a purely mechanistic existence.
Exactly.
It sounds like a lose-lose.
It does. Yeah, you're catching on quickly. And that's precisely Watts's point.
Okay.
He argues that both of these models are fundamentally flawed
Okay.
because they're based on this false premise. The idea that we are separate beings, trapped inside our skins,
Right.
and ultimately at odds with the world around us.
I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
So Watts is setting us up for like a completely different way of looking at things.
Yes.
Is this where his dramatic model comes in?
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Instead of seeing the universe as an artifact or a machine,
Mhm.
Watts proposes a third option.
Okay.
He suggests that life is more like a grand play,
Okay.
a cosmic drama where we are both the actors.
Okay, hold on a second.
Yeah.
This cosmic play idea,
Yeah.
does that mean we're just puppets in someone else's production?
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of Watts' thinking.
Okay.
He's not suggesting there's some external playwright
Like,
controlling the story.
Okay.
Instead, he's saying that the very essence of life, the driving force behind everything, is the game of hide and seek.
Hide and seek. That's not what I was expecting.
I know it sounds a bit strange at first.
Yeah.
But bear with me.
Okay.
Think about why peekaboo is so universally delightful,
Okay.
especially for babies.
Yeah.
Watts suggests that it taps into something fundamental
Okay.
about reality itself,
Yeah.
this constant interplay of revealing and concealing,
Okay.
of appearing and disappearing.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
So how does this game of hide and seek
Right.
connect to the universe as a whole?
So Watts argues that the universe is essentially playing hide and seek with itself.
Okay.
It hides its true nature, its oneness,
Mm-hmm.
and then rediscovers it through every being, every experience, every moment.
So it's not about us being separate entities,
Right.
but rather different expressions of this one underlying reality.
Exactly.
We've just gotten so caught up in the game that we've forgotten who we really are.
Exactly. We've taken on these roles, these limited identities, for the sake of the play.
Right.
And we've become so good at it that we've convinced ourselves it's the whole truth.
This is making me think about all the different roles we play in life.
Yeah.
Friend, parent, employee, even just like the me that present to the world each day.
Right.
It's like we're constantly putting on these different masks.
And those masks, those roles, they aren't necessarily bad.
Right.
They're part of the play.
Okay.
But Watts is inviting us to see beyond them, to remember that we are also the actor behind the mask.
Right.
The consciousness that animates all of these different expressions.
It makes me think about all the times that Watts uses humor to drive home a point.
Yeah.
Like when he compares the spontaneous unfolding of life to something as unexpected as a fart.
Yeah.
Or he talks about the role of a guru
Yeah.
as someone who's mastered the art of playing the game, of guiding others to wake up to their true nature.
Right.
He uses these really interesting examples.
He does. Humor is a big part of his approach.
Yeah, he doesn't want us to get too bogged down in seriousness.
Exactly.
He wants us to see the playfulness, the absurdity, even the joy in all of this.
Totally.
So if we're not just our limited egos, if we're not just these separate selves, then what are we?
Right.
Where does our sense of self come from?
That's where things get really interesting, and that's what we'll be exploring next.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've kind of established this idea that the universe might be playing this giant game of hide and seek with itself.
Right.
And that we're all just expressions of this one reality, just totally caught up in the drama.
Yeah.
But if that's true, then where does our sense of self come from?
Right.
We definitely feel like individuals.
We do.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a question that Watts dives into pretty deeply.
Okay.
He challenges this notion that we're just these little egos.
Yeah.
These like isolated minds in charge of everything.
Okay.
He points out that the line between voluntary and involuntary actions is a lot blurrier than we might think.
That makes me think about breathing.
Yeah.
Like we can consciously control it, but most of the time it just happens automatically.
Exactly.
And then there's like this constant battle between my stomach and my brain.
Yeah.
Like who's really in charge there?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. These everyday experiences highlight how much of our being operates beyond our conscious control. Watts uses these to illustrate the illusion of the ego, this idea that we're completely self-contained and running the show, when in reality we're deeply intertwined with everything around us.
So if this me that I experience isn't the whole story, what is it?
Yeah.
What's the nature of this self that feels so real, so solid?
Watts suggests that the self, or the ego, is more like a process than a fixed entity. It's a dynamic interplay of thoughts, emotions, sensations, and experiences that are constantly changing and evolving. He even uses the analogy of a flame. It appears to have this continuous identity, but it's actually a process of constant transformation.
That's a vivid image.
Yeah.
So if we're not these solid separate selves, does that mean our anxieties about death are misplaced?
Watts offers a very radical perspective on death, too. He encourages us to think about it from the perspective of the dramatic model. What if death is not an ending, but a transition? Like waking up from a dream?
He actually asks us to imagine what it would be like to go to sleep and never wake up. And then he flips it around. What was it like to wake up after never having gone to sleep?
Exactly.
Whoa.
It's a mind-bending thought experiment.
It is.
He's challenging us to question our assumptions about death. To see it not as an annihilation of self, but as a transformation, a shift in perspective.
So instead of fearing death as this like absolute end, we could see it as just another act in the cosmic play, a transition to a different state of being.
That's the essence of his argument. And this ties into that sense of interconnectedness we were talking about earlier. If we're not separate selves, but expressions of this one underlying reality, then death could be seen as emerging back into the source. A return to the ocean of being from which we arose.
It makes me think of that beautiful image that Watts uses. the multidimensional spider web covered in dew.
Yes.
Where each drop reflects all the others.
Yes.
It's a powerful metaphor for the interconnectedness of all things.
It is. It's a brilliant illustration. Just as each dewdrop contains the reflection of the entire web, so too does each individual being contain the essence of the whole universe.
Wow.
We're not isolated entities,
right,
but reflections of one another, interconnected in ways we can't even begin to fathom.
That makes me think about how the meaning of a word depends on its context.
Right.
Its relationship to other words.
Yeah.
Just like that our individual existence gains meaning through our connections with everything around us.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this brings us back to the dramatic model.
Okay.
In a play,
yeah,
each character is defined by their relationships with the other characters,
right,
their role in the unfolding story.
Yeah.
It's the same with us.
Okay.
Our lives gain meaning and purpose through our interactions,
right,
our contributions to the larger web of life.
But we often miss the beauty of this web.
Yeah.
The intricate melody of the universe.
Yeah.
We get so focused on the individual notes
Right.
that we forget to listen to the symphony as a whole.
It's like being tone deaf.
Yeah.
The music of life.
Yeah.
We get caught up in our own little dramas, our perceived successes and failures.
Right.
And we lose sight of the larger dance.
Yeah.
We forget that we're all in this together, that we're all contributing to the unfolding story of the universe.
And I think that's where a lot of our anxiety and suffering comes from. This feeling of separation, of being alone.
Right.
In a vast and indifferent universe.
Yeah.
But Watts is offering us like a different perspective.
He is.
A way of seeing the world that can bring about a deep sense of peace and belonging.
He's inviting us to wake up.
Yeah.
To the reality of our interconnectedness, to see ourselves as integral parts of this grand symphony, this cosmic dance of energy.
It's like realizing that we're not just insignificant specks in a vast, indifferent cosmos, but rather integral parts of an interconnected web of life, each with a unique role to play in the unfolding drama of the universe.
I love that.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is, and this leads us to another key aspect of Watts' thinking.
Okay.
How we can actually shift our awareness to experience this interconnectedness more fully, because it's one thing to talk about it intellectually, but it's another thing to really feel it.
Yeah.
To live from that place of understanding.
So how do we bridge that gap?
Right.
How do we move from intellectual understanding to a lived experience of this interconnected reality?
That's the million-dollar question.
Okay.
And it's a question we'll be exploring in our next segment.
Okay. Okay, so we've been unpacking some pretty profound ideas from Alan Watts. Like this idea that the universe is engaged in this cosmic game of hide and seek.
Right.
And that we're all expressions of this one reality. And that our sense of self is more fluid and interconnected than we might realize. But how do we actually live with this understanding? How do we make it a part of our everyday experience?
Well, you know, Watts was really wary of offering any rigid prescriptions or step-by-step programs because he believed that the journey of awakening is unique for each individual.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not like there's a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
Yeah.
But he did offer some valuable insights into how we can cultivate a way of being that aligns with this understanding. One key principle that he emphasizes is the importance of going with the grain of the universe.
Going with the grain.
Yeah.
What does that look like in practice?
Well, it's about recognizing and aligning ourselves with the natural flow of life.
Okay.
Rather than constantly trying to force things.
Yeah.
To conform to our expectations or desires.
Right.
Watts uses the analogy of a sailboat.
Okay.
You can't just sail directly into the wind.
Right.
You have to tack back and forth,
right.
working with the forces of nature rather than fighting against them.
So it's about finding that sweet spot between effort and surrender.
Yes.
Between setting intentions and allowing life to unfold in its own way.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this can be challenging,
Yeah.
especially in a culture that prizes, control productivity and achieving goals at all costs.
Right.
But Watts suggests that this constant striving often leads us further away from the very things we're seeking.
Like what?
Peace, happiness, a sense of connection.
It's like we're on this treadmill, running and running,
right.
but never really getting anywhere.
Exactly.
We're so focused on the future and what we're trying to achieve
right.
that we miss the beauty and the richness of the present moment.
Exactly. And Watts believed that the present moment is where we find the fullness of reality, the interconnectedness of all things.
Okay.
It's in the simple act of breathing.
Yeah.
Feeling the sun on our skin, of connecting with another human being.
Right.
That's where life is truly lived.
It makes me think about how we often talk about like encountering reality or facing facts.
Right.
As if there's something separate from us, something we have to like confront.
Exactly.
But Watts is suggesting that we are reality.
Right.
We are the facts. We are the universe experiencing itself in this moment.
That's a powerful way to put it.
Yeah.
And when we start to see things from that perspective,
Yeah.
a lot of our anxieties and fears start to dissolve.
Okay.
We realize that we're not separate selves struggling to survive in a hostile world. Right, but rather expressions of this one life force that is constantly creating and recreating itself.
It's like we're all waves in the ocean.
Yeah.
Distinct, yet inseparable from the vast body of water that sustains us.
A beautiful analogy.
Yeah.
And this brings us to another key principle Watts emphasized.
Okay, what's that?
Gratitude.
Gratitude.
Yeah.
It seems so simple.
It does.
But I know I often forget to practice it.
It's easy to get caught up in our wants and desires, our perceived lacks and limitations.
Right.
But when we shift our focus to what we already have, to the abundance that surrounds us, our whole perspective changes.
Instead of focusing on what's missing, we start to appreciate the gifts that are already present in our lives.
Exactly.
The air we breathe, the food we eat, the people we love.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the simple act of acknowledging and appreciating what we have can create this profound sense of peace and contentment.
Okay.
It connects us to the web of life, to the flow of giving and receiving that sustains us all.
It's like we're tapping into this wellspring of abundance.
Yes.
That's always available to us.
Right.
But we often block it with our negativity and our sense of lack.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And this sense of gratitude naturally leads to another important principle.
Okay, what's that?
Compassion.
Compassion for ourselves and for others.
Yes, both.
Okay.
When we recognize our interconnectedness, when we see ourselves reflected in every other being, compassion becomes a natural response. It's no longer about pity or condescension, but about recognizing our shared humanity, our shared vulnerability, our shared longing for connection and belonging.
It's like that saying, there but for the grace of God go I.
Exactly.
We all make mistakes.
Yeah.
We all experience suffering.
Right.
We all have the capacity for both great love and great harm.
And Watts reminds us that even those who cause harm are often acting out of their own pain or ignorance.
Right.
It doesn't excuse their actions, but it allows us to hold them with a sense of compassion, to see the humanity behind the behavior.
It's about recognizing that we're all in this together.
Yes.
That we're all in this journey of learning and growing and evolving.
Exactly.
And sometimes that journey takes us through some pretty dark and difficult places.
That's true. But Watts believed that even in the midst of suffering, even in the face of death itself, we can find a sense of peace and even joy by remembering our interconnectedness, by recognizing that we are not alone, that we are part of something much larger than ourselves.
It's like we're all cells in the body of the universe.
Yeah.
Each playing our part, each contributing to the overall health and well-being of the whole.
And when we can see ourselves from that perspective, it can be incredibly liberating.
Okay.
It frees us from the burden of trying to control everything.
Right.
Of trying to make ourselves into something we're not.
Yeah.
It allows us to simply be, to accept ourselves and others as we are, flaws and all.
It's a beautiful vision, but I have to admit,
it
can be challenging to hold on to in the midst of everyday life.
It's true.
Yeah, the world can feel so chaotic and fragmented at times.
But Watts reminds us that we always have a choice.
Okay.
We can choose to see the world through the lens of separation, of fear and scarcity.
Right.
Or we can choose to see it through the lens of interconnectedness, of love and abundance.
It's like we're wearing these glasses that filter our perception of reality.
Right.
And we can choose to wear the glasses that distort and limit our vision.
Yes.
Or we can choose to wear the glasses that clarify and expand it.
That's a great way to put it. And the more we practice seeing the world through the lens of interconnectedness, the more natural it becomes.
Right.
It starts to permeate every aspect of our lives, from our relationships to our work to our relationship with ourselves.
It's like we're rewiring our brains, retraining ourselves to see the world in a new way.
Exactly.
And that new way of seeing opens up possibilities we never could have imagined before.
It allows us to tap into our creativity, our compassion, our capacity for love and joy.
Right.
in ways we never thought possible.
Right.
And it empowers us to live in a way that honors the interconnected web of life.
Right.
To make choices that contribute to the well-being of the whole.
It's been an incredible journey exploring these ideas with you.
It has.
Alan Watts truly challenges us to see the world with fresh eyes.
He does.
To embrace the mystery and wonder of existence. And to live in a way that reflects our interconnectedness with all things.
It's been a pleasure sharing this exploration with you.
Likewise.
And as we wrap up our deep dive into the brilliant mind of Alan Watts, I think it's fitting to end with one of his most powerful reminders. This is it.
This is it. What a simple yet profound statement.
It's a reminder that the present moment is all we ever have.
Yeah.
And within this present moment lies the fullness of reality, the interconnectedness of all things,
right.
The very essence of life itself.
It's an invitation to wake up to the miracle of being alive.
Yes.
To appreciate the beauty and wonder that surrounds us.
Absolutely.
And to live each moment with a sense of gratitude, compassion, and joy.
And that's a pretty incredible gift to offer ourselves and the world.
It is.
So, as Watts would say, let's go out there and play the cosmic game with open hearts, curious minds, and a deep appreciation for the incredible tapestry of life that we're all a part of.
Beautiful words to end on.